it doesn't happen very often that you would have a single person that has enough knowledge to be able to do all in one. So it's really getting the right people doing the right work in the right space and then bringing it together really makes for a good outcome for the project. When you're running anything BIM related on a large road project, it's not about just pushing buttons in software. It's about keeping a bunch of different people from different teams, often in different locations, especially nowadays, all moving in the same direction. And it really is no small feat. One of the biggest challenges is getting everybody on the same page early. Designers, engineers, contractors, they all have different priorities. The designers are focused on geometry and design intent, while contractors are thinking about constructability, quantities, and sequencing. So a big part of my role is translating those needs into a BIM workflow and how that works for everybody. The other one is you've got to have a clear roles and responsibilities from the start. Who's modeling what are they modeling, who's reviewing it, who owns which piece of data, and when handover happens, if it's still fuzzy, things will slip through the cracks. Having a solid BIM execution plan, that's actually used. And that's the key part, I would say. There's so many documents that I see that are hundreds of pages long, and I can probably count on one hand who's actually read it.
Hi, Matthew. Welcome to the Digital Construction Podcast. How are you today?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks. Yourself?
Very good, very good. Thank you. It's great to have you here today. So today we have Matthew Jedniuk. He is the digital delivery lead for transport at GHT, but he's worked in all of the main companies. So he's worked for WSP, Mott MacDonald, AECOM, like a very long and fantastic career. He has so much knowledge in this space. And today we are going to talk about how do we design roads and BIMs, and how do we manage teams and projects. So I think it's a good opportunity to learn a lot for anyone that works in BIM, particularly in infrastructure side, but I think many of the lessons we'll learn today will be applicable for everybody that works in the digital space. But before we start, Matthew, I have an icebreaker for you. What's the best piece of advice you have ever received in your career?
Best piece of advice? To be fair, and I actually still use this with some of the junior staff that I work with even today, is that there's no such thing as a stupid question. If you don't know the answer, then it's not stupid to you. So it's something that, I still repeat many times, that the only way you're going to find something out is by asking that question.
Yeah, that's a very good one. Yeah, I agree. It's a classic, but it's an evergreen.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about your career journey and what led you to work into the digital space for the construction industry?
Yeah, sure. So I started off as a drafter. So I started off my apprenticeship at AECOM, or Mortsel back in the day, but it's AECOM now. And I did that for about 10 years as a draftsman, until I got the opportunity, sort of knocked on the door to move into design. So then I moved into road design, and then from there, obviously, working with all the different disciplines, although you do that in the drafting space, in design, you sort of get a bit more of appreciation of what can and could possibly go wrong if you don't communicate and coordinate properly, and that sort of led me down the path of sort of BIM, the new word at the time. This is quite a long time ago now, but getting into the digital engineering space was really just about that. I saw an issue that I could get involved with and to help coordinate design models, etc. And that sort of led to being a DE coordinator. I got an opportunity again. I think it was on the Sydney Metro job when I was at Mott's. to get into the digital coordination, and I quite enjoyed myself. And then from that moment on, I pursued that as a career from a coordinator on some of the major projects like the Parramatta Light Rail stage 1. Got the opportunity to get into the coordination, and then eventually the opportunity to get into as a DE lead on some of the smaller jobs, and now running some major projects in Sydney.
Yeah, that's good. And certainly you have a lot of experience in this space, and we know we work on many projects, and it feels like sometimes there are similarities between projects, but every single project, it's different. And I think the different requirements for the different projects can really affect the way we work. So from your point of view, how do projects requirements can impact BIM workflows when you design roads?
Yep. Yeah, it's when it comes to road design, like getting the project requirements right at the start is pretty much everything. It can really lay the foundation to deliver a very good project, or it could then come crashing down. Everything that follows, well, as I said, everything sort of starts to wobble if you don't. And in our world, that means understanding the specs, the regulations, who's using the road, what the stakeholders expect, and even things like environmental conditions and future expansion. So understanding, I guess, the major, impacts that could happen at the very start of the project really is where BIM really kicks off in a road space. But in saying that, this is also where it starts to gets interesting. In all of those requirements and how they shape the digital workflows, and it is quite easy from New South Wales point of view, and working a lot with Transport New South Wales requirements. They have a lot of that, I guess, sort of set in stone now with the different frameworks that are coming through. It'd be a different story if you were down in, say, one of the other states, which they're still in their sort of infancy stage when it comes to digital requirements. But really, it's what the client eventually wants. It's their asset data that needs to be handed over, in what format it needs to be in. What requirements are there? Is it ISO 19650? We bake that into our BIM execution plan from day one in terms of getting that set up. What data capture, how we structure our models, all of that comes back into how we then set up our CDE to then produce that project and to work through that project. So yeah, if we don't have clear requirements, that's when things can get very messy, and we can end up redoing work, chasing information.
Yeah, definitely. And it could feel probably overwhelming for people that are new into this space to think about all of the different things you need to collect before you actually start. But if you could narrow this down and think about at early stage, so it's early stage, what are the most critical considerations for BIM infrastructure project that you need to do when you think about requirements at early stage?
Yep. So early stage considerations, I'd say first, nail down the project information requirements and make sure everyone's on the same page. Then think about the level of detail, the level of information needed at each stage, because not everything needs to be modeled at 100% from day one. It is a sometimes slow crawl to get to that 100% model. But it's just, that's probably the key part, is don't expect that you're going to have 100% everything modeled. And also don't forget about the coordination, especially in infrastructure. Roads are rarely standalone. They interact with utilities, structures, drainage, and more. So how you plan model federation and the version control early can make or break the workflow down the line. So at the end of the day, the clearer the brief, the smoother the BIM delivery is going to be.
Yeah, I really like the point you make around the making sure you don't model at 100%, because sometimes there is even like, it's a very difficult balancing act act where you try to, because you want to deliver a good project, and sometimes you feel like you didn't add enough details, and especially if you are new into this space, you feel like you're not adding enough details, you're not doing your job properly. But it's really an art to make sure that you deliver the right amount of information at the right time that meets the contract as well. So that's not an easy one.
100%. And it does come back to also think about what you're delivering to, like in infrastructure and transport, or really any project. There's different stages. Like you could have a reference design, you could have a concept design, you could have a detail design. It could be a D&C going gun-ho and trying to model everything from the get-go. It just means you're going to have to redo it many times, because you lock down an alignment first, get an understanding of where things are going to sit before you start implementing all of your, I guess, BIM aspects onto a model.
Yeah, definitely. Another key aspect especially when you work on large projects, is that you end up splitting models. So you can split models for different reasons, like contractors or the size of the file, etc. But how do you decide how to structure and split a BIM model when it comes down to road projects? So when it comes to the big road projects, you're never dealing with just one model. You're dealing with a network of models that need to work together. It's almost like how's the best way to say it? It's almost like a well-rehearsed band going together. It's you can't cram everything into a single file. You do need to break it down. So it will just become a nightmare. And in reality, especially nowadays with the different software that's being used, it's probably going to crash. There's just so much that needs to go into those models now. So I guess the first thing that I guess to look at is how the project is going to be broken down physically, like by chainage or by section or by precinct, how it's going to be delivered contractually as well. It could be broken down into stages. It could, I can't think of the word. It will come to me, but phases.
It could be a staggered delivery. So you may not deliver every single discipline in one go. So you do need to break it down into the disciplines themselves. That gives us like a natural way to split the models, even from a road design. So if you're just looking at the road design and you had 30 kilometers of highway, let's say, okay, maybe not 30, let's just say it's 5 kilometers. You think about even breaking it down into 1 kilometer sections. So you don't just have one designer working on it. You could have 5 designers working on it. This will then help the process of getting the project actually delivered on time. There may be major intersections that have more detail and need multiple people to work on compared to if it's just a straight road in, so, Hume Highway, middle of sort of New South Wales running down. It's pretty much a straight alignment. So it's a lot easier. You can sort of project that information across depending on the software itself. So, and then the other key aspect of it is construction side. They will build it in certain ways as well, and they will want that information to be delivered, I guess, in that area of works, because they may have to shut down a road in that area or vice versa. So it's not just about geography. When we split by disciplines, you also have to have in consideration about the roads, the drainage, structures, utilities, maybe even landscape or electrical as separate models, which we do. That's transport's way of doing it. They have multiple disciplines. So you have, I guess, a parent-child relationship. You have your disciplines and your sub-discipline codes.
There is so much. There are so many ways to split the models, and it's really like an art by itself, like to find the right balance to make sure that you orchestrate everything in the right way. So even like producing a list is not that straightforward.
100%. And it's also the way each team can work in their own space without tripping over each other. Then when it comes to the actual federating the model, those models all come together like in a coordinated model, like usually in something like the Navisworks or some sort of CDE viewing tool, which is like iTwin, etc. But I guess the key part is that it's consistency throughout. If you don't have a solid like model naming convention or shared coordinate system and agreed, I guess, levels of detail, it does fall apart. You could have all these different separated models, but if they're not all going in the same direction, they also don't work. So you do need to also think about that as well. And it's not just the one piece of software that we use. You'll have multiple softwares that also, from a geolocation point of view, work in different ways. Take Revit and OpenRoads or Civil 3D or 12D. They don't talk to each other directly. There's always either some sort of control that you need to have before you can export something out or incorporate something.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. And I was wondering, like, even from the coordination point of view, when you have the different disciplines, you need to coordinate and you need to have different files. So how do you manage the coordination part between disciplines when you have multiple files?
Well, again, it does go back to the consistency side of it. Generally speaking, they all have different sort of file types, but generally trying to use an open source, and that's actually, again, Transport New South Wales has pushed that, using the types of like IFC files that would then go into a Navisworks or some sort of federated model tool, also helps because it then gets incorporated the same way. It just makes, I guess, our lives just that little bit easier on that front, but that's not taking away that you can bring them in directly from different file types, but generally speaking, it's industry foundation classification, which is what IFC stands for, I believe. I always get the C part wrong. I always call it class, but it's something along those lines. But yeah.
And I wonder, like, we are talking about like large projects, complex projects, but maybe sometimes there are situations where the project is small enough that you can put everything into one single model. Have you ever seen situations like that where everything lives inside one model, and how do you manage the different disciplines within one single model, if you ever do?
Yeah, to be fair, it's been a long time since I've seen everything just done in a single model. Generally speaking, it's just something that just isn't done, because usually, and I'm only speaking from my own personal experience, is that not every, I guess, designer or engineer is a guru in every single discipline. I'd say that's probably a very trying to again think of the word, that it doesn't happen very often that you would have a single person that has enough knowledge to be able to do all in one. So it's really getting the right people doing the right work in the right space and then bringing it together really makes for a good outcome for the project.
Yeah, definitely. And now you touch about this point about people, and I'm thinking about the challenges that we have when we need to manage BIM teams, particularly on large projects. So what are the key challenges from your point of view when it's about managing BIM teams on these broad projects?
Yeah, so when you're running anything BIM related on a large road project, it's not about just pushing buttons in software. It's about keeping a bunch of different people from different teams, often in different locations, especially nowadays, all moving in the same direction. And it really is no small feat. One of the biggest challenges is getting everybody on the same page early. Designers, engineers, contractors, they all have different priorities. The designers are focused on geometry and design intent, while contractors are thinking about constructability, quantities, and sequencing. So a big part of my role is translating those needs into a BIM workflow and how that works for everybody. The other one is you've got to have a clear roles and responsibilities from the start. Who's modeling what are they modeling, who's reviewing it, who owns which piece of data, and when handover happens, if it's still fuzzy, things will slip through the cracks. Having a solid BIM execution plan, that's really that's actually used. And that's the key part, I would say. There's so many documents that I see that are hundreds of pages long, and I can probably count on one hand who's actually read it.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Yeah. These documents are tricky because it's a contract. Basically, you commit that you will do something, and then a few months later you realize that you agreed that you will do something. And
that's really the key part. Is as much as, like, by all means, and this is coming from a D lead, the DXP or BEP or whatever you want to call it, outside of New South Wales, the DXP really it's to bring, I guess, when someone questions why they need to do it and what they need to do, is to bring them back all in line and say, look, this is what we're doing as a project as a whole, and getting everybody, I guess, to agree to it. They may not read the document, but you can then point them to the sections that they need to really understand or be involved in.
Yeah, definitely. And do you use any specific collaboration tools to keep all of these people aligned?
Yeah, so it does come back to the CDE itself. So we do lean heavily, on those CDEs. It could be your BIM 360, which is ACC now. You've got 12D Synergy and ProjectWise itself. Generally speaking, from transport, I use a lot of ProjectWise itself. I know from GHD, when in the water space, we use a lot of ACC, because that's where a lot of the software itself is a very Autodesk-based design. So that is, I guess, where the key documents sit. But when to bring everybody together, it's the likes of Navisworks, Revisto, BIM Collab, to actually, I guess, then see that federated model, to issue, like, for the tracking of the issues and the coordination side of it, allowing people to see everybody else's work without having to actually have that software installed on their machine as well.
Yeah, we take it for granted now, but these collaboration tools have really changed the way the industry operates. I can't imagine like how we could possibly deliver these projects without these tools at the moment. Like, it would be a nightmare.
100%. And even in those softwares, they can then branch off into their own discipline. So we've got administrators that just look after those systems, because they can get more and more complex as well, especially when it comes to compliance. Like, again, I'll use transport as an example. We pretty much all projects now have to be compliant with ISO 9650. It needs to be pretty much standardized throughout, and it does help, I guess, the entire team, that when they go to one project to the next, it's consistent. We have the same approach, whether it be a small project or a big project. They've got a similar trying to think of the word, similar not platform, but set out inside of those softwares as well, because it can be a whole learning curve by itself. Even though it's been around for a while, I know I've been using it since 2012. ProjectWise, every project I go to, it's the same question: how do I use it? So you're redoing the training again and again. So it is a little bit daunting sometimes, but having that DXP, that standardization, makes it easier for everybody.
Yeah, and thinking about the delivery of the projects, like your experiences in engineering, like from the first point of view rather than the construction side. And one of the things I think it's a big challenge for the construction industry is how to deliver projects within budget. Like engineering firms, there are fees, and the expectations are often very high. You need to deliver to this level of quality. This is the amount of work you need to do, but there is only a certain amount of hours that the teams can actually produce before you run out of money, right? So
100%.
Yeah, how do you, from your point of view, how do you manage that? Like, you have these big projects, you have a fee. How do you manage that? Yeah,
so to be fair, this is a big one. No one wants to no one's a project that runs late or blows the budget, and I guess that's exactly where BIM itself and digital engineering can make a massive difference if used properly. I stress if used properly, because it can also go the complete opposite direction, and it's implemented the wrong way. It can also cause those cost blowouts. So I guess one of the best things that BIM does is it helps spot problems early. When they're still, I guess, cheap and easy to fix, when it's still in the design phase, we can clash models before anything hits site, track design changes in real time, make sure that the info flowing between disciplines is clean and current. That alone cuts down a ton of rework, and really it's usually that's usually where both time and money disappear. Then obviously it comes to the scheduling side of it from a construction point of view. Using the digital engineering and the BIM models themselves, we can get a better grip of what's happening. How do we do a 4D simulation? How will things actually fit in that location to build it in the first place? Bring in some of the construction equipment to make sure that it's not going to hit anything, or they may be, for example, a crane. You may need to think about, we need to do a footing for this crane because it's a 100-ton crane that needs to sit in this location to be able to drop something down a tunnel shaft. So it's really, I guess that's a key part from a 4D simulation point of view. Like we can think ahead and try and predict what might be needed on site when it gets there. Now, from an engineering firm point of view, like keeping our own fee on track is about being smart with our effort. The digital engineering lets us, and the BIM models lets us reuse work. Not all the time, because it does depend on what software it comes in. A reference design is done in one, and then we have to do detailed design in another. Doesn't really work because it's rework. But it can also be used to do repetitive tasks. Especially with AI coming on board these days, you got lots of smarts like your Dynamo, etc., to be able to automate some of these tasks, so it's not someone they're clicking a button to make something work. But it does rely on good planning. If you overmodel early or don't set the right expectations with the clients, you can burn through those hours very fast as well.
Yeah, definitely. And can you think of the common mistakes that lead to budgets overrun when you deliver BIM projects?
I guess some of the common mistakes that I see is overcommitting to the LAD too early, so the level of detail and definition too early, not having clear sign-offs, or letting scope creep without calling it out. I guess, it's not a big one, but another one is also not aligning with the contractor assets. Or asset owner early enough as well. If you hand over the models and they can't use it, or they ask for extra data late in the game, that's also, I guess, a big sort of red flag as well.
Yeah, and for these projects and for the firms, there is also a risk related to the usage of these technologies. So we know that there is performance bottlenecks, especially in large BIM models. The hardware and the software that we use is very expensive, so you need very good computers. Software is actually also very expensive. From your point of view, what are the biggest risks related to the usage of BIM as a technology, and what happens if you have a too slow or outdated technology? Can that affect the delivery?
Yep. So don't get me wrong. We all love BIM models. They look cool in a 3D space, but it can all come crashing down very quickly if you don't have the right tech to keep up with it. I guess one of the biggest risks from the BIM workflows for road design is performance-based bottlenecks. Road projects can stretch over kilometres, as like previously talked about. terrain models, utilities, pavements, bridges. If you try and, I guess, shove all of that into the one model without a plan, things start lagging, start crashing, refusing to open. And that has happened. I've seen it happen. They've had to go back and pretty much rebuild some of those models. So it's not just about the model, it's about the gear. If someone's running a model with a huge point cloud or a federated model file on a 5-year-old laptop, it's going to crawl. Slow tech equals frustrated users equals mistakes, plus they also have the human nature revert back to something that works. So you can then lose potentially years of trying to progress, and you could go back to how it usually is done. So the other part is also the outdated software is another big one. It's if the team's not in the same version, or if someone's using tools that don't appear as support key features, like clash detection, data drops, IFC exports, things break, it creates friction that ends up time and budget again.
Yeah, definitely. And there is always a point where you finish your job, it's time to do the handover of the BIM model to the builder or the contractors. So from your point of view, how should BIM models be prepared for an effective handover to the builders?
That's a good one.
Because they may have their own interpretation of what a model may look like, right? So there is always this tension.
Correct. And you could have the best BIM model in the world, but if the builder can't use it, it's basically just it's a piece of artwork on a screen. When we're prepping a BIM model for handover to the contractor, the main goal is clarity and usability. That means stripping out the noise, locking in the design, and making sure the model reflects what's actually being built. Builders don't want a half-modeled ideas or design options, or things that are still in testing. They want confidence that what's in front of them is coordinated and constructible. I guess a good handover model should include, like your clear model breakdowns, so they know where your pavement, your drainage, your structures, etc. sit. Verify clash-free, although I hate using the word clash-free, but because there's no such thing. I haven't seen a design yet that's clash-free. By the time you finish it off, there's always going to be issues that need to be resolved on site, but as best we can, the major impacts, and it's clearly identified. I guess if anyone else that's listening there, don't be afraid that there is clashes, but highlight those clashes. Make sure that the construction team knows that they exist, so they're not out on site. I guess people sitting around on site costs money, and that's where the frustration comes, and that's when lawyers start getting involved, especially on D&C. So essential metadata as well, materials, levels, dimensions, etc. And probably most importantly, align it with the construction sequencing if you've gone down that 4D route itself.
Yeah, and what are the main challenges that you've seen when you try to hand over the BIM model to the contractors or the builders? What can possibly go wrong?
Plenty.
Yeah.
Yep, there's plenty. For one, not every contractor is in the same BIM maturity level. You do, just like in the construction or in the engineering industry, there are different tiers. You'll have your tier ones, which generally they actually have their own. They'll have their own digital engineering teams now built inside their systems. But when you start getting into the tier 2s, tier 3s construction companies, they probably never have heard of it. They're still using your 2D PDFs. So you do have to balance high-end digital deliverers with practical usability. There's issues of multiple contractors, especially on the big roads projects. You may have JVs from a construction point of view, not just from a design. So you might have one firm doing the earthworks and another doing the bridge, and potentially a third doing the utilities. Keeping everybody on the same page is definitely a tough one. Generally, you will have a lead contractor that will take the reins, and then they'll take ownership to, I guess, support, the different tier levels below them. But you do need a clear model federation strategy, a consistent naming convention, single source of truth, like the CDE, very important. Again, usually that would be, if it's a DNC, it's a big project, the actual contractor would own the CDE. They would be the ones that would be inviting us as the subbies in to do the engineering for them. So it's also working with them at the very beginning to, I guess, what do we need, but then it's also set up for what they need as well. So having that good, I guess, rapport and relationship at the very get-go to make sure that we get across the line at the very end. Version control, naming convention, it's probably one of the key ones. The guys on site, they want to be confident that what they have is the correct version. They're not getting something that's months old and we're 6 iterations down the road. So having that version control, having also the access control that people can actually see and edit, who can view it and who can actually make changes to it is also very important. Change tracking, so the contractor isn't building off, as I said, an old version of that file, and it's been uploaded to that latest file format as well. And it may be that you do have to potentially design in one software and export out into another. It's the different companies or different even areas might be 12Ds the way they go from a design perspective. Another region might be Bentley, but end of the day, they all still want potentially a Genio file, because they're going to plug it into the surveyors and go out on sticks and start setting it out. So there is making sure that you are passing the right information across. But I guess, honestly, the best way to make handover work is to bring the contractors in early, even during design reviews. I know we do have a lot of CDRs, so inside when we're actually doing our reviews before we'd finally submit to get their input. That way they know that what they're getting, and they also have the opportunity to adjust models to suit before it goes out for a submission itself.
Yeah, definitely. And we are close to the end of these episodes. Before we go, I wanted to ask you, you've been working on real world projects, and you must have seen so many different challenges and good moments, bad moments. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned over your career, and if you have any tips for teams that are managing BIM projects?
To be fair, I think it's trust is probably one of the key takeaways from it. There is there's a few that outside of trust, but I guess what it boils down to after many years, start with the end in mind. Make sure, I know it sounds very, very simple, but it's not. It's a hard thing to do, to think about what you need to produce at the very end, at the very beginning. So yeah, it's very difficult to do, and it's something that, to be fair, every project you will struggle with. It's not something that's just snap of a finger, it just happens. You need to, and this is where it comes back to trust. You need to trust that your team can deliver, so you can think about what you need to do at the very end. Keep it as lean as you can, as possible, and keep it clean. Don't overload models with unnecessary details. Focus what's actually needed at the correct phase of works. they can just balloon so quickly, and it's just, you've just got to constantly do a little bit of housekeeping, make sure that you've got what you need and you can manage it from the start all the way to the end, and get people talking. Communication is probably the key aspect. It's been an issue since I very first started, from having people sitting right next to you that don't talk, or disciplines that don't talk to each other. And to be fair, even with all of our technology and advances, with the likes of Teams, which is what we're on now, it still is an issue that people, I know, it's not afraid, but I guess they get so stuck into what they're doing, they get tunnel vision, and they just want to get their design done, and they're not communicating changes, potential issues with the person that could be sitting right next to them. Have that communication, get people talking. That is what really is going to save time and money, and keep all of your design managers and project managers happy, and get these projects on budget. Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. I like how I can see from your comments how your experience emerges, and how you can boil everything down to something simple. That it looks simple, but at the end, this is what really matters. So thank you about that. So we are at the end of the episode. If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Send me a message. Say hello. I'm quite happy to help anybody out. Feel free to ask questions as well. I'll answer them in messaging, and potentially add you in on LinkedIn, and we can share either horror stories or hopefully future projects.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. That was a great episode. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.